Okay. Um, in this discussion, I wanted to start out with some physics. So, let me go ahead and do that. So, I always get a lot of, and when I study or, consider physics and the mathematical equations behind, you know, trying to solve the origin of the universe and all that stuff. They they don't seem to get it. They will use all these intricate mathematical equations to find solutions for all kinds of different problems in space and physics. They'll figure out, they can tell by the spectrum that what kind of element it is. They can tell. I mean, there's so much information that can be gleaned from the light coming to us. I mean, there's X-rays, there's all different spectrum of light coming to us, and so they have all these things there to figure out all kinds of stuff. You know, just incredible how much they can discover and find just from the math, just from observations, right? But when it comes to the origin of the universe, when they have a problem where when they're doing the math and all this, you know, technical math with tensors and everything about the universe and everything, and they say it's a problem because the problem is it comes up with the answer is infinity. Not only that, I think even Mikio Kaku said multiple infinities. So that right there is already nonsensical. How can you have multiple infinities? But anyways, um, they don't get it. I was watching a video. I won't say which one it was, but they were talking about. Let's say, let's say I had a jar, and we'll define it as infinity, and I put a whole bunch of balls in, and I take one out, or I take a whole bunch out and leave one in. I take a whole bunch out and leave one in. Um, that's right there. That I mean, it's kind of blatant that there's a problem with that thought experiment. It's supposed to be a thought experiment, right? So how can you take away from infinity? And what's left over is infinity too. So how does that work? Well, it's nonsensical. Because first you're defining a finite jar as infinity, and the problem is that the infinity is not a quantity. That's the problem. You can't take away from infinity, and you can't add to infinity because it's not a quantity. Hello, Christian Carpenter. How are you doing? So infinity is not a quantity, and that's the first mistake. So when you're talking about the origin of the universe and the creation of the universe and where did it come from and everything, this mathematical problem comes into play, you know, because what we have is we have quantifiable, measurable amounts of time and distance. So how do you get quantifiable, measurable amounts of time and distance? Well, it has to be dilated down from infinity, from infinite measures of time and distance, which to us is nonsensical. We can't understand it. That is not our realm of existence. But the fact remains is that this universe is a fabrication of dilated time and distance, and the thing that dilates time and distance is mass, which comes from matter. So how is the universe made? Why is there time and distance in the universe? Well, it's because of all the matter in the universe. So first you have to have the creation of matter. Now this thing is about a singularity exploding from nothing, from nowhere into everything that it is. That's unicorn talk, That's nonsensical too. So, and just ask faithful, honest, and true. Jason, nonsensical. So this existence of the universe depends on how much mass and matter there is in the universe, which is a lot. But of course, we know that matter can't make itself, energy can't make itself, energy can't order itself, matter can't either. Matter can't direct itself. And so we have this problem where we have, specific quantities. We have a limited definable quantities, which is what the whole universe is made of. The shapes, sizes, and distances, measurements, shape, sizes. It's all made possible by the dilation of time and distance. That's where we get all our math from, because everything is a specific, limited quantity. Because if you have no mass and no matter, you don't have quantities. You don't have physical, limited amounts of quantity. And that's where this problem comes into play, which I didn't even watch the whole video. I'm just surmising where the physics teacher was going with it. Because if you have a limited measurable amounts of quantity, you're not dealing with infinity. You're dealing with dilated time and distance, which is what makes everything possible. But anyways, that's a significant thing that I hear a lot about people talking about. I mean, you're talking about you're trying to figure out the origin of the universe. You're trying to get an equation to solve everything, but you're not looking at what the evidence is. You're not going where the evidence leads or following the evidence where it leads. And where it leads is the formation of matter and energy, which is interchangeable, except that matter has mass. And it's the mass of the matter that has gravity, which dilates time and space. It's because of the massive black holes of all the galaxies around the universe that we have an existence of time and distance, time and space, a fabrication of time and distance. And without the mass in the universe, there would be no dilation of time and distance. There would be no universe. So it's the matter in the universe that makes possible, quantifiable amounts of time and distance, where physical things can happen, physical things exist, and matter can exist with the properties that it has. The elements can exist with the properties they have. And of course, 20 of the most common elements are essential, absolutely essential to life, because they're the elements that are programmable and programmed inside of us, without which we couldn't exist. So we can't exist without the elements, the 20 most common elements in the universe. And an additional 20 elements are beneficial to life as well, and also make life possible, such as silicon, which is not, as far as I can tell, or as far as I can remember, it's not an essential element for life to exist. But without silicon, we wouldn't have an earth to stand on. So there's all these interrelated elements, of iron and everything, hydrogen, liquid metal, all that stuff. This is all stuff that makes possible our existence, or the hydrogen and things like that, with the exception of the inert gases, or whatever you call them, the xenon and neon and the helium and stuff like that, whatever. But they're part of the periodic table too, and it's part of the structure of the universe. But anyways, not only do you have to have the matter, of course, but the matter has to be ordered, has to be physically put together in a constructed manner, which is not possible in nature by natural means. And not only that, but the construction itself carries with it all kinds of information. The sugars, the carbohydrates have information. Then there's the DNA information, there's the mitochondrial information. There's all kinds of instruction, order, intent, and purpose, and direction, and viable working mechanisms that all make possible our existence. And then there's the quote-unquote spark of life, which they can't put their finger on. They don't know what it is, which is like the spirit that's within us, And of course, anything spiritual is not physical anyway. So you have wisdom, understanding, advice, determination. All these things are not physical. Expectation, hope, expectation. They're not physical things. So we live in a physical world, but we are not merely physical beings. We live in, we're seated in heavenly places, as it were, because everything we say and do has a cause and effect in what people believe. And what people believe determines what people do. That's why everything we say has to be God's word, for one thing, so that we don't glorify ourselves, and for another thing, that God's word is true, and it's effective, and able to save people. So we have the gospel in our hands. We apparently don't fully realize the potential of what we have in our possession, the gospel, because it's the gospel that's able to change lives. So we are mere physical beings. We carry, like John says, or the First John, or what it says, this the word that we have handled. It's the word that we have handled. So we take in our hands, so to speak, the word of God, and we present the word of God to the nations, to the people, and it's the word of God, the truth of God, that it has the power to transform people's lives, and it will transform anyone's lives into everyone's lives. Jesus is a light to lighten nations. He's the light to the Goyim, or the nations. And at this point, everybody is related anyways, and we're all basically, descendants of Israel, as far as that goes. So, and even if we aren't, the Word of God can still transform everyone's life. So I got a lot to cover, or a lot I can cover right now, so maybe I'll just get started with this presentation here. Before I do that, just go like this. Okay, so let's get started here, and I'll start out with some pictures. I like pictures, and I'm sure a lot of other people like pictures as well. So I was, with all this Afghanistan stuff going on, I wanted to get the DNA of Afghani people. This is what is this? Is the Y chromosome, right? So we got Pakistan, we got Syria, we got Punjabi. I don't know if it's the SHU that's Pakistan. I mean Afghanistan. Well, we have. This is what it is. It's India, then it's Pakistan, then it's Afghanistan. So this SHU might be Afghanistan. So it's basically a meshkla, as they would say, a mixture of everything around the area. Anyway, so let's look at the composition of the Afghani people, just as a, you know, just for our edification here. So what do we see here? The most population in the area is the RY chromosome. Now it could be R1A, R1B, it doesn't matter. It's just R, descendant of Gomer. So when they got a big discussion. They talk about the Aryan invasion and into India and its ramification. There's a dispute about whether it was an invasion or just a population. I mean, we can see right here what it is. It's not up to question. We can see what happened here. It's the RY chromosome, which is Japhethite, which is the majority of the population here. But anyways, let's say this is Afghanistan. We'll say it's SHU. I don't know. I forget what that is. But it's basically just a blend of what's already there in the area anyways, from Pakistan, because Pakistan is in the middle, India is on this side, Afghanistan is on this side. So then we have, what else do we have? We have, the P is pretty significant, but I think the P and the Q could possibly be the same thing, but I'm not sure yet, which would be Madai. And if it's not Madai, it'd be Tubal. It's Japhethite. So, and this, we don't have a red there, but let me see what else we got. We got the K, which is, I've designated as Tubal, is also Japhethite. The L is the interesting elephant in the room, which is a Greek. These are the Thracians. The L is the Thracian Y chromosome. So it's the Greeks that Alexander the Great brought over to India is the L. So that in itself could be part of the quote-unquote Aryan invasion into India. So we have all these Japhethite Y chromosomes in India. You have the R, you have the L, you have the P, you have the K. These are all of them are Japhethite. So even with the strong autosomal influence of dark-skinned people, which is evident, very clear, Maybe I'm getting some feedback. Okay. It's still, you can still see why there would be, lighter skinned people. I wouldn't even call them Aryan because Aryan is, has a bad connotation to begin with. It's just Japhethite people. Of course, the R1A, which is part of it, would be Ashkenaz, which is German. Anyway, the R1A to a large extent, or to a certain extent, not a huge extent, because if you look at it, it's a little bit thinned out in Germany, but it is there and it was there in Germany. So, okay, what else we have in this population here? We have the, let's say, the J. What's the J doing here? This could be, it's either J1 or J2. It's mostly J2 in this area here, all the way down Silk Road. This J is mostly J2, which I've pretty much come to the conclusion that the J2 are basically the descendants of King David. Because, we do have the house of Aaron, or the Levite, the Cohen, the Kohanim. They have a J1 Y chromosome, which is normally or often Arabic. But the J2 is Judaic. Of course, David is from the tribe of Judah, which I call it Judaic. J2 is Judaic, but more specifically, it's probably the house of David, direct descendants of David, King David, and King Solomon, of course, and, all of King David's other sons. So this J, it's becoming more clear to me the J2 are the descendants of David, the house of David, which is significant. It's almost as significant as the house of Nimrod, which is the C Y chromosome. Where's the C Y chromosome? C is this gray. There's only a sliver of gray here in Afghanistan, but in Pakistan there's a bigger sliver of gray, and up north there's a big sliver of gray. This is the CY chromosome. And of course, we know the CY chromosome moved east. And there's slivers all the way down to Australia. In Australia, it's significant amounts. And of course, it goes all the way to America, the CY chromosome, the house of Nimrod. So we have this house of, because there is a house of Nimrod in history, it actually defines it as the house of Nimrod. So we have a house of Nimrod, which is the CY chromosome. Now we have the house of David, which is pretty much the J2. The J2Y chromosome, which is all this dark blue color here. All this area here in Iraq, in Iran, this, half the population, Turkey, Syria, Turkey. This is all direct descendants of King David, for all intents and purposes. The house of Judah, the house of David. So we have the house of Nimrod, which is the gray. We have the house of David, which is the J2, because this is mostly J2, as I was saying. I'm repeating myself, but it's just, J1 is mostly down here, and J2, this area here is mostly J. There's some J1 there, of course, too, but it's mostly J2, and on down the Silk Road is J2, because a lot of the Judaic people became merchants or were merchants, and they went up the Rhine River, some of them, and ended up calling themselves Ashkenazi after the descendants of Ashkenaz, which is the son of Gomer, which is the R1A, which is the green. So we have the green here. This is huge, which is both R1A and R1B, but this green population is also a huge population here. And that would be the Japhethite. So we actually have the three families represented here. We have the house of Nimrod, which is the African family tree. We have the house of Japheth, or Gomer, which is Japheth plus all the other ones, which is the Japhethite tree, the house of Gomer. And we have the house of David, which is the J2 Y chromosome, which covers this whole, actually went all the way into China via the Silk Road. So it is significant numbers, or population numbers in China. That's specifically J2, which would be probably direct descendants of David, King David. So that's pretty interesting. This red, of course, would be the O. This is Magog, probably. This is the largest population in the world is O, and you can see the numbers here. It goes down into Korea, and all in this area here, all over in this area, of course. That's Magog. And of course, the N. Where's the N? You have the N, the O, NO. NO as, I'm going to have to do this here. Okay, it's kind of a purple, purplish color. But anyways, I'll look up here for it. Yeah, it would probably be this color, which is not the same color as the blue. So this purple color here, that would be the N population, which is be Meshech. Meshech in the, looks like what could be Afghani people. Afghanistan population. Which, if you go to Joel Richardson's channel, he's heavily into the underground church, and he's highlighting the Afghanistan Christian church, or the church in Afghanistan. And he has all kinds of videos on that and everything. It's Joel Richardson. So he's doing a great work there, even helping out the Afghanistan Christians if somebody is so inclined to help the Afghanistan Christians. That's Joel Richardson, his channel. So, not that I have huge numbers watching my videos, at least not yet. But anyways, that's why I'm doing more videos more often right now, because that's what you need to get the message out. So other than that, let me see what else is in here. That's basically that's about it. There's a light blue, which is E. E is Hamitic. And of course the D is here. This is D, the Y. It'll be Tibet, Japan has the DY chromosome, which might have been an offshoot of Nimrod, but it seems to be pretty separate. But the interesting thing, we need to find out if Nimrod had a brother that stayed with him in the area, because the DY chromosome is completely removed from Africa. I mean, as far as major population, it's completely removed from Africa. The same as the CY chromosome, almost entirely removed from Africa. Or it actually, C is almost entirely removed, with, of course, exceptions, because anybody could have gone to the Pacific somewhere, and with all the sailors, from Spanish sailors and Portuguese sailors, they could have hitched a ride on a boat and gone back to Africa or whatever, or the Caribbean, or anywhere in the world for that matter, right? Which is a thing, by the way. But anyways, that's about it for this Afghanistan people there, I guess I'd beat that into the ground pretty much. or the bee population. Of course, the bee is African too. That'd be in these areas here, I guess. Anyways, moving right along after the first one. Basically the same thing with different colors probably. We have the green as the E, so we can see the E populations here. The E is all up into Greece and Turkey and Syria, and of course, and part of this E, I believe, is Canaanite, Hittite, Canaanite, as well as I hope to show a map of that. So all this E here, that's all African, either E M123 or some other E, of course. And the Berbers, of course, are E M81. The Canaanites, probably E M123 or some facsimile derivative of that. The Egyptians or the Mitzrayim is the E, well, these are all E3s, of course. E3 V12. And the Kush is E3V32, if I remember correctly. Okay. And the orange, what's the orange? Oh, the orange is G. G is interesting population because it's in the Jewish people as well. The G population, I've designated that as being Assyrian as opposed to Syrian. Syrian, I believe, would be the F. Where's the F? This purple color, there's a little bit of purple there. Purple here, these purples. I believe these purples are the original Arameans. You know, not necessarily Syrians, but the Arameans, which are Semitic. So here we have the distinction between the J1. The J1, which remember I said some of the J1 are descendants of Aaron. So it's not so cut and dry as to J1 is Arabic and J2 is Judaic, you know. It's not so cut and dry. But J2 is pretty much probably the descendants of David. And we could probably distinguish if there's branches of J2 that aren't, maybe we can distinguish, I don't know. It's kind of a blur when you zoom in as to what it is. But when you zoom out, you can see the general picture, so to speak. Okay, this is the GY chromosome, which I designated as Assyrian from Asher. Of course, Asher was in this area here. See, that's not far away from Asher. And of course, the G did mix with the Jewish population, you know, to a good extent, and they went into Europe as well. The Middle Eastern history, we don't have a whole lot of history, but we can see they went that way too, which is interesting. Okay, what we got? And these are just other pictures of G. That's G. Showing the same thing, probably showing the same thing, you know. Asher was in this area here, this region here, and they just basically, you know, every time a population got big and started conquering the world, then they kind of like ran to the mountains, it seems, you know. And you can see how G went up into Europe as well, even into Germany, you know. Okay, just another chart of Asher G, which I believe is probably an older chart anyway, so probably not as significant. Now this would be MS, M and S, because it's divided. It's M and S on this side, M on this side, but they're separate lineages, but they go all the way back to the beginning, and their close proximity is an indication that they were originally the same Y chromosome, which could include the K as well. But that's needs some more investigating there. Okay, this is the chart showing the DY chromosome, which I was noting how far removed the DY chromosome is from Africa. Remember, the DY chromosome belongs in the African family tree. So you kind of have a problem there because this out of Africa thing, if it came from Africa, there should be some D in Africa. And there, of course, there isn't, but we know we didn't come from Africa anyway. We came from Turkey. And these areas here, you know, as people ran into the mountains, are the most diverse with the Y chromosome, not Africa. So when you hear them saying Africa is the most diverse population, not with the Y chromosome, it isn't. You know, it might have a lot of variation and mutation, but that doesn't equate to, you know, diversity as far as the Y chromosome goes. So, yeah, so this area here, basically Turkmenistan, has the most diverse population in the world regarding the Y chromosome. Okay. Now this would be the E, basically all of the E Y chromosome, which probably includes the B, A and the B as well. Of course, excluding the C and the D. And the A and the B populations don't seem to be that significant anyways. They just wanted to identify somebody as A000000. Whatever. Of course, I'm being facetious, but again, the EY chromosome, and this is their belief, the D and the E went out of Africa. There are branches that went out of Africa, supposedly, but from my observation is that they never went to Africa, never were in Africa. And here, this is showing D and E going into Africa for some reason. I don't know, it might be somebody else's belief or something. But the E is the original population because they have the E of the Phoenicians or the Put, descendants of Put, the E descendants of Mitzrayim, and E descendants of Cush, and everybody else came from that. The A, the B, the C, the D came from the E. Of course, the D. Yeah, sometimes they don't know what they want to believe, whether it was the D or the C. I think pretty much they're saying that everybody came from the C. And no, we didn't all come from Nimrod, I don't believe. But the house of Nimrod migrated east all the way south to Australia, east to the Pacific, all the way north to America, as we know. Okay, this is the R1B, which would be the descendants of Riphath. Notice not so much in this area here of Europe, because this area belongs more to Ashkenaz. And so the R1B would be Riphath, Ashkenaz's brother, the son of Gomer, because we know that Gomer is the father of Europeans in history. And Ashkenaz and Riphath had another brother named Togarma, so there's more groups of R in this area over here too as well, which would be Togarma, which was, they're all table, it's a table of nations. Okay, I just want to rub in the fact of how wrong that they are. This is the mitochondrial DNA, and they, according to this chart, the L became N, which in a lot of other diagrams, the L became M first and then N. But, so I guess they're not sure which is which. And so we're going to see some discrepancies here of this, just by the science alone. And that's fact. So you have the M going over here, you have the M, and apparently, according to this, the B came off the N, except that the B is Semitic. And if that's not convincing enough for their misrepresentation, you follow these M lines, it goes to G, Y, and A. A is Semitic. A is Semitic, B is Semitic. Then you go on into America, of course. A, remember this all comes from M, supposedly. That's just how wrong they are. Because apparently, when they started with the mitochondrial, they started in America with A, B, C, D, and whatever. They skipped the E because that's too confusing with the, even though it's still confusing. It's too confusing with the African Y chromosome. But anyways, they start out in the Americas with the A, B, C, and D, except the A and the B are Semitic. The A is probably the wife of Madai, which Madai asked Shem to marry one of his daughters. So that's why you have the R group of mitochondrial DNA, which is totally separate from the Middle Eastern mitochondrial group that is Semitic of the mtDNA maternal lines. So Madai asked Shem to marry his daughter, and so he married Shem's daughter, and that is the reason for Semitic mitochondrial DNA in Asia. Of course, the B is Semitic too, except that the B is from the Middle Eastern mitochondrial DNA lines. But there are a lot of mitochondrial DNA derivatives in Asia that are Semitic that are not from the Semitic line as B is. I think B is like pretty much the only one that jumped from the Middle Eastern line and went over this way, all the way to America. But it seems to have gone by way of the Pacific to America. So, and since there's no Q going this way and there's no C going this way, because the C in the Pacific is C2, not C3. The C's in America are C3. So apparently only the mitochondrial Semitic line from the Pacific made it to America. I mean, it's always possible that it went this way, but more than likely they crossed the Pacific and went into America, and there's no Y chromosome survivors from the Pacific in the Americas. Just the mitochondrial B maternal line. So then we have the X. The X is Semitic too. The X went back this way as well. Of course, these here, of course, with the exception of the X, which which is the Semitic line from Asia. These are all Semitic mitochondrial DNA lines. Of course, what's not, I think you have the C, D, G, and E. C, Z, G, D, and E are the Japhethite mitochondrial DNA. But it's just not shown, wouldn't be showing them all here anyway. So, now this map is showing the NY chromosome, which I'm quite pretty sure that is Meshach. So this would be the descendants of Meshach, the son of Japheth, as opposed to Magog, as opposed to Gomer, as opposed to Tubal, as opposed to Madai, the sons of Japheth. So, as opposed to the Greek Thracians and Javans, so it'd be Javan and Tiraz, Gomer, Tubal, Meshach, Magog, and Madai. And Madai will be in this area. I believe Madai is the Q, which would be the Medes, which spread all the way into Europe eventually as well. Could have been this way. Could have spread this way as well. But the Medes became a strong population. The Medes and the Persian, of course, invaded everything. Okay. Moving right along. Now this is somebody trying to argue that the eye came from Africa, but no, that's just evidence that the Jewish people went into Africa in the days of King Solomon and the Phoenicians and the like. But anyways, the interesting thing is that the representation of the Jewish people in America is the whole line of Abrahamic line. It's the J1, the J2, the I2, and the I1 are represented in America by way of the traveling with the Phoenicians, who were also R1B, T, Q, maybe possibly some Q, and the North Africans were E, and even a B. So this idea of African American Indians is a thing. It's a real thing, for that matter. So, and that's because of the Phoenicians who went to America. And believe it or not, there is a group of people in New Jersey, believe it or not, of all places, who are called the Pineys. And they are, quote unquote, indigenous to New Jersey. They're called the Pineys. They are short people because everything in the Pine Barrens is short. But they have European features. I'm not making this up. This is true. I don't think too many people know about it, but it's true. I had a next door neighbor who was a Piney, and I had an offer to go fishing with him, but I kind of hesitated because, of course, he drank beer when he went fishing. But in hindsight, I'm thinking maybe I should have gone fishing with him, because just for the experience to have gone fishing with a genuine Piney who was indigenous to New Jersey, and it was just an interesting thing. And he looks European. He's short, but he looks European, has a fairly large nose, So I would, I would love to have had his DNA information, but anyway, maybe somebody's going to investigate descendants of pioneers to see what Y chromosome they have and stuff like that. But he was clearly European, just short, with a fairly large nose. But that's just one of those things. They call anomaly. I guess you call it an anomaly. Okay. So here, this chart's pretty good, but it's a little bit extensive here. You got the column Proto-Europeans. There's nothing Proto-European about it. Semitic. Get your story straight. This is European, North European, Eurasians, Central Indo-Europe. They call it Indo-European, just because there's Japhethites in India. They call it Indo-European. Okay, so Japhethite. It's not complicated. R1b, we know that's the descendants of Riphath, because you can't intertwine the two. They have the same origin, but they don't belong to the same branch. Which is not complicated. And of course, here we have some J2, some EV13, which could be EV123 or derivative or something like that, which is, in Greece they have quite a bit of E, obviously because of the history. J2, I'm not making things up, this is J2 in this area. J1 is more down in this area. Again, you have the G up there, which is the Assyrians. That sort of moved out of Mesopotamia and Anatolia up in this area here, as they went to grow higher in the mountains. And we have Africans, E. There's V68. There's the V12 right there. But still, we've got to do some more investigating. So here's the E M123. Now I have a chart of the E M123, which kind of shows that they're Canaanites. So if I could ever find that, that might be interesting. This is all of the R, which includes, of course, America. How did the R get into America? I know. I know how the R got into America. By way of the Phoenicians in the days of King Solomon, that went to mine copper and gold and silver in the Americas, and remains there to this day. It's not complicated. Okay, so David went into Africa, probably before that time or at that time, as well. Of course, King Tut is, I believe, an R1b, which confounded the Egyptologists, you might say, because they wanted him to be African, but turns out he was European. But it is what it is. Okay, I already have that. How did that happen? Okay. Oh my God. Well, I got a lot of stuff here. Okay, I guess I'll get somewhere here. Try again. Well, somehow I got lost here. Get a different angle here. try it this way. Okay, this one I got. This one I got. There we go. Okay. So this would be the T Y chromosome. So the TY chromosome is the Greeks. And apparently, for some reason, we have to check out the history. The Greeks went all the way down here. I think there's Greek settlements down there, as a matter of fact. In Africa, I think there's Greek, the Horn of Africa, I think there's Greek settlements there. But anyways, it would be the TY chromosome because the T is in this area here, as opposed to the H is more in this area and up in here. So this is exclusively the TY chromosome, which is Greek. So I believe Alexander the Great, when he went on his marauding campaign, he brought the T and the, did I say H? Yeah. Not the H, the L. Because the T and the L, sometimes they group together. The L is Greek, too. So he brought Alexander the Great, went over here to India and to ride elephants, and he brought with him the TY chromosome and the LY chromosome. Of course, the L being the Thracians and the T being the Javans, original Europeans, which could be, I won't say, probably the Neanderthals were descendants of Gomer, I'm thinking. But that's hard to tell, but it could have been descendants of Gomer. Okay, what's this? So this is the R1A. This would be Ashkenaz. Notice how it's absent in Western Europe, even in Ireland and Scotland and England. The R1A Ashkenaz is absent from there, but interestingly, the Rhine River goes up here somewhere. The Ashkenazi Jews that were merchants up the Rhine River, they took on the name for themselves as Ashkenaz. So that's why I named the R1A Y chromosome as Ashkenaz, because basically that's where he went. Riphath went this way. And this would be the quote-unquote Aryan invasion, which wasn't necessarily an invasion, into India. Of course, out of Somali, there's a lot of dark-skinned Indians here because of the equatorial region. As well. Okay. So this is the R1B now. Notice the stark difference. The R1B is exclusively in Western Europe. It should be Riphath. So Europeans, Western Europeans, you are descendants of Riphath, out of Zomali, at least to a significant extent, or a certain extent. And of course it was the R1B that went this way, and probably King Tut is an R1B because of this activity here, or possibly. So, okay. And we have the H. Remember the H, remember what the H is? Anybody know what the H is? The H is the Elamites, Semitic. They have what they call the Elamo-Dravidians, which are also consist of L. But the Elamites are, of course, Semitic, and the HY chromosome is the Semitic Y chromosome of the Elamites. So the Elamites and if you ask the Dravidian people, these people, they all say they are Arabic. They came from, they're Arabs. Well, of course, they might not know the difference between Arabic and Elamites, but that's what they are. And of course, the Romani gypsies are up here too. And they're the descendants of Elamites, Elam. And of course, you can see the migration of the Elamites was very successful here in India, into India. Okay. So again, we have the L as opposed to the T. So when Alexander the Great came from Greece, which is the Thracians, well, let's put it over here too. But the Thracians, he brought the Thracians and the Javans, he brought them when he went to go ride elephants in India. He brought the Greek LY chromosome as well. So L is highly represented in here. So remember I said the Elamo-Dravidians also have the LY chromosome. That's there. But it's not because Elamites are Greek, because these are two different trees. So today's Elamites, of course, consist of the L and the H. H being the Semitic Y chromosome from Elam, and L being the Japhetic Y chromosome from the Thracians, or Tiras, the son of Japheth, in the Table of Nations, of course. I couldn't see this before for some reason. Okay, this is probably language groups, which I don't like to study so much, because to me it's not relevant what language the person is speaking. Now this starts getting interesting here, because this is the Denisovan genes. Okay. And as you can notice, you have Denisovan DNA, quote unquote Denisovan DNA. It's DNA comparable to Denisovan DNA, not that there's descendants of Denisovan. Of course, the Denisovan DNA originated here, in this area here. I don't even know why it's not highlighted. So it must be an old map. Actually originated in this area here, Papua New Guinea. Spread, of course, into China, spread into Australia. This must be an old map. Okay. So it'll be, of course, in the Native American Indian population because of the QY chromosome, which is Japhethite. But there's another map that shows that I saw something interesting. If I can find it. Oh, I have to wait for that. Yes. This is the QY chromosome in Europe, and the Madai, the Medes. How they went to Europe, they probably went this way, through the mountains, through the pass here, or this way as well. But they're Japhethites, the Medes. If not, it's Tubal or somebody, but it's still Japhethite. Okay. Okay, again, this is we've already seen this. This is Meshach. This is the E1B. Now we got the E1B, or apparently the EY chromosome somehow, of course, became a part of the Jewish population. It could have been Canaanite or something or whatever. But because Albert Einstein was an E1B, and other people were too, such as Hitler was an E1B. But It's still kind of hard to tell what lines are the correct lines. But here is the EV13, which, okay, this is what I was thinking. There was a group of Africans that settled this island here, which I forget the name, but they also became, what, the first Phoenicians that attacked when the Phoenicians were hostile toward Israel. There was a group of people that came over here this way and attacked Israel. And that was this population, which was Egyptian or African. It's these people there that I believe probably this V13, probably this branch of people that went up into Greece. That probably, because this island was taken over by the Europeans or the Grecians, the Greeks. And they probably took these people hostage as slaves and whatever, you know. And that's what happened there. So that V3 would probably be the descendants of this population on this island here, which I believe were part of the population of the so-called Phoenicians that attacked Israel, or whatever group it was. I forget what it was. Something like that. Before the Phoenicians in this area became allies with Israel. But that's EV313, whatever, E13, V13 group. So that's interesting. That deserves more study. And of course, this one is the M81, which is most likely the descendants of Put, who originally settled in this area, but of course, as things happened, they migrated all the way into North Africa, all over North Africa. They are the descendants of the original Phoenicians, which were descendants of Put, the son of Ham. So Put is the brother of Mitzrayim, the brother of Cush, the brother of Canaan as well. So when you see Phoenicians, you can see there's a remnant of the Phoenicians throughout the Mediterranean as well. Anyway, so okay. This is just the I1 Y chromosome. Of course, keeping in mind that before Israel was pushed out of the land of Israel, taken captive up into this area here, before that happened, in the days of King Solomon, Israel was one nation. In the time of the Phoenicians with King Solomon and the sea travel of the Phoenicians, Israel was one nation. That's why you have the I1 represented in America, as well as the I2, which is in this area. Well, which originally was Israel, of course, before anybody was taken captive in the days of King Solomon. So that's the reason why there's an I2. By all of Israel is represented in America, which includes I2 and I1 and J1 and J2, because Israel wasn't split apart yet, hadn't been split apart yet. So that's very significant. And of course, when they were split apart, then they were pushed north. They traveled this way. They traveled this way. It looks like they traveled a lot this way. Ended up in this area, what they call Germany, or Germanic people. Of course, they went up this way. They're highly represented in Scandinavian, but it's a Semitic Y chromosome. It's I actually saw a map that said I1 as as Mesopotamian origin. So, of course, this I1 is Semitic. What's the Semitic Y chromosome doing up in Scandinavia? Because they were driven out of Israel, they went into this area, they migrated up all the way to that. You can, I mean, this is not a matter that can be questioned. This is a matter of fact. This is absolute. It's absolute that the Semitic Y chromosome was driven out, migrated this way, and became the Vikings, which invaded England, of course, and I am from this area in Scotland, up here, Edinburgh, Scotland. That's where my family tree goes back to, and that's where my Y chromosome comes from, which is this Y chromosome, I1, I1M253. Okay, so this is the totality of the Y chromosome. It includes the I1, the I2. So the I2 is represented here, the I1 is represented here. But they're grouped together. This is the entire I population, which is Israel, who was, when they moved, they were kicked out of Israel or taken captive up in this area. Some remained, of course, and some left. Some migrated this way. But it's interesting, there's a lot of I2 in this area as well, which is still Turkey. And it's below here. So there's some I2 up here too, which is there's a history of these people here too. Okay. So now, where did I lose it? Okay, there it is. It's the same thing, same designations, only it's telling you what the haplogroups are, each individual haplogroup. M253, M253, that's me. 253, see this 253 up here? Scotland. I can trace my ancestors to Edinburgh, Scotland. My direct paternal line to Edinburgh, Scotland, which is he was some kind of a significant, important person or something. From there, he wasn't necessarily royalty or anything, but he was significant. So I can't even remember my own family history. But anyways, that's me right there, M253, and that's M423. That is M253, that's me. Okay, so let me see. Okay, this is the I2 by itself, or actually the I2A by itself, which is highly represented in this area. This population here is like over half the population is I2, which is Israelite. Of course, that's the area where they had Yugoslavia. It was all that confusion, Anyway, and of course, this is Crimea here. I mean, this area here is Crimea, whatever, which is also has significant populations of Israelite people, and I think even some Judaic or descendants of the House of David. And Okay, now this is the map. This is the map showing the J2. This is exclusively J2. This is the entirety of J2, which I believe, as I said before, are probably direct descendants of David, and if not one way, if not directly paternally, they're descendants of David in more ways than one. Anyway, just like I'm probably a descendant of David too. But because you're talking in 10 generations forward or backward, you're talking about thousands, thousands of people. You know, 1,000 grandparents going back 10 generations. And forward, it's just thousands of people. Okay, so let's just say, for the sake of argument, for all intents and purposes, J2 is the house of David. Okay, so we have that. We know about the Rhine River, right? We know about the Ashkenazi Jewish people going up the Rhine River. But do you know about the Judaic or house of David along the Silk Road? So this is obviously along these routes here, along the routes. So that's why you have, this is China, by the way. That's why you have Judaic descendants of David, the house of David in China. And you can clearly see a significant population of the house of David in China. And that's why the Bible even mentions that he's going to call them out from as far as the land of Sinim. Sinim is Sino, Sinim is China, the Silk Road. And of course, we can't forget, because of course here we can see. Here we can actually see. Look at this. This is India. This is Pakistan. This is Afghanistan. This area here of Afghanistan, they're descendants largely of King David, for the sake of argument. And of course, this is the Turkmenistan and the countries or whatever they are. I don't even know. My geography here is not so good. But this is Iran. Now we're talking Iran has this population here, which in some areas is over half the population is direct descendants of King David. So when we talk about obliterating Iran and stuff, or not we, but whoever does, this is what you're talking about. You're talking about the house of David. When you talk about dealing with Iran, you're talking about the house of David. Of course, it's over here too in Israel too. And of course, there's a dispute between this house of David and this house of David. This part of the house of David and this part of the house of David. Now, if we could all understand that this is the house of David and this is the house of David, maybe there wouldn't be as much friction. And of course, huge amounts. This has got to be like over half the population here being of the house of David. So, DNA doesn't lie. It tells it's absolute history. And of course, it's all the way in India as well, for that matter. And of course, into Africa, there are places in Africa with the J2 Y chromosome. I think it's even more than what's shown here. But it is what it is. And of course, Italy is highlighted as being largely of the house of David, and all you have to do is look at the Italian people, and they almost look Jewish, or Arabic, Jewish, whatever. Greece is largely of the house of David, not completely, because there's other populations there as well, such as the African populations from here. And Anatolia. Anatolia in history is the battleground for to be king of the hill, basically. Either Anatolia or this area here of Mesopotamia, or this area of Turkey. And of course even into this area, because this crossroads here. So again, to stress the fact that Israel is in the middle of ancient history. You cannot remove the Bible from ancient history because it is ancient history. It's in the middle of it. You cannot remove the Bible from ancient history. Can't, just like you can't remove Israel or the house of David from ancient history. And of course, the J1, the J2, the I2, the I1, these are all descendants of Arpachshad. Or Arphaxad, Arphaxad. It bugs me so much whenever you hear historians, talking about ancient history. Seems like every single one of them has his own pronunciation of the terms, and so you can hardly understand what they're talking about because their pronunciation of the people is so different than from what you might be used to hearing. Because they'll mispronounce or pronounce differently everything. Not that anybody has the correct pronunciation, but it's just so it's really kind of amusing how each video that I watch, I have to interpolate the transliteration of the name of the people of who they're talking about. Just crazy. Just interesting. Anyways, so House of David in Italy, Greece, Anatolia, which is Turkey, and Persia, which is Iran, and Iraq. This is Iraq. So when you're talking about, dealing with people, keep in mind that they could be descendants of the House of David, for that matter. And the more we know, the more we could understand. Because, this migration along the Silk Road is much more significant than traveling up the Rhine River in Germany of the Ashkenazi Jews. So, I mean, this is the undeniable history, because of course when Israel was pushed out, they went up all the way as far as Scandinavia and such, and into this area, of course. But Judah was pushed out too. They were both pushed out. Both Israel and Judah were pushed out of the land of Israel. When Tom Sawyer went there was nothing there. Tom Sawyer went there and said, "This is just rocks. There's nothing here." Because Judah was pushed out, Israel was pushed out, Judah was pushed out, and of course Judah, J2, probably being the significantly, or the majority part of J2 is probably most likely the direct descendants of King David. Just probably a matter of fact. Because of King David and King Solomon, who was, of course, David's son. Because, in case people don't realize, David's Y chromosome was the same as King Solomon's Y chromosome. It's the same Y chromosome. Probably, with very few different, probably not even a difference. Could be one difference. It could be no difference between David's Y chromosome and King Solomon's Y chromosome. The number of copies of the Y chromosome information, the information that you can't mix up. I go with my simple jargon. Anyways, it's non-recombining information from the Y chromosome. In other words, it doesn't recombine with anybody else. It only repeats and copies whatever your father had. So whatever David had is what King Solomon had, probably for all intents and purposes. So it's the same Y chromosome. So all the descendants of King David, all the descendants of King Solomon left their mark on Judah for sure. So we could probably identify that. Okay. So, moving right along. Now, here's the good stuff here. Remember what I said? The other map had Neanderthal down here at the bottom. Just so people know, I'm not making it up. This is a contrast between the Denisovan and the Neanderthal DNA. Okay, now we got that straight. So, but this is going to be interesting because we're going to look closer at the Denisovan DNA, which you can't see very well in this picture, but you can see that it that originates in Papua New Guinea. These are actual tests. These are actual testing. It's not the best picture in the world, but it does show, in other words, this is the makeup of this individual here, which is the reason for this color. This is the makeup of this individual, which is the reason for this color, etc., 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 etc. Right here, you have two people right together. His makeup is this color, and the makeup of this person is this color. So now that we got that straight. So this person here with the yellow possibly could have the CY chromosome from Nimrod, which would be African, which would be non-Japhethite, which is the reason for this yellow color here, which is the reason for the Olmec light color in this area. Just saying, I want to stress that. Now, the CY chromosome also comes down through here, but you can't really see. Well, you can't see it because there's only this person, this person, this person, this person that they have tested showing on the map. But if they were to have tested more Native Americans in this area or from these areas originally, which if there is such a thing anymore, then it would show that the CY chromosome has a streak down through this area because the CY chromosome is from Nimrod, which is from the African family tree, even though Nimrod never went to Africa. So you have the Olmec civilization, which is this area, with this yellow here, and you have the Waorani Indians, which are the Auca Indians and the Wayus and the other ones with a CY chromosome. Let's see there. And so then that explains these populations. But what explains this right here? What explains this area here? Well, I believe the Semitic populations from the time of the Phoenicians of King Solomon, and of course there's a huge representation of R1b in this area as well. But even so, R1b is Japhethite, so it should make it red, right? But no, we have too much Semitic autosomal DNA and African autosomal DNA going up through here. So the combination between the African E and B Y chromosome and the Semitic J1, J2, I2, and I1, not only that, but there's also the GY chromosome is represented in America too, because the GY chromosome became a part of Israel early on as well. So the GY chromosome is also represented in America as well as the J1, J2. At any rate, it shows, even though this is one individual, another individual here, it is showing that there is a a consequence or a result of the either or and or both of the autosomal of the African and the Semitic population in America. And we know this is probably exclusively the descendants of Nimrod. Waurani, the Yus, and the Quechuas, and the Yus. They have the CY chromosome in this area, and of course I grew up right here in this area. That's where I grew up, and the Alcas are over here in this area here. Alca, Waurani, Indian savages, you know, descendants of Nimrod, but their lives were transformed by the gospel, the good news of God's word for the nations, and they all benefited. And of course, the Semitic population is absent of Neanderthal DNA, and of course, this is Semitic up here in this area here. Clearly an influence on the autosomal DNA, so that it's less Neanderthalic or Japhethite. Even as far as the Elamites over in this area, less Neanderthal DNA. Now, for the Denisovans, there's another interesting thing that we need to see, that because you have Denisovan DNA, are not direct Denisovan DNA, but copies of the Denisovan DNA because of the fact that the QY chromosome is Japhethite, right? So the QY chromosome is Japhethite, which is and Denisovan is Japhethite, except that the Denisovan was probably a dark skin colored person, because of the area that they're in. So that's going to be interesting as well. And I think more recent depictions of Denisovans show them as dark-skinned people. So this is the map of the Denisova allele frequency, or the segments of information more likely associated with the Denisovan people. So this is hot, this is colder, and this is very cold here. So, of course, this is Semitic here. Now, do you see a difference here? All these areas that are Semitic remain cold, right? Except for the influence of the R1A in this area too, because there's a huge influence of the R1A and the R1B. Well, the R1B is there. But why? These are Semitic. They're cold. This is Semitic. It's cold. This is Semitic, largely, as I showed at the beginning of this video. It's very cold. Why is the African Denisova allele frequency not as cold? Well, that's because the autosomal DNA from the CY chromosome and the DY chromosome and the dark-skinned people that moved into this area, remember, dark-skinned, African, dark-skinned, or C and the D never went to Africa, but they brought the genetic information into this area. So that's why I'm saying that the Denisovan is later on, because it became autosomally influenced by the Hamitic African tree in this area. So that explains, well, before I even get to that explains why the African family tree doesn't correspond to the Semitic lines, Semitic autosomal information, right? So the African autosomal information, or the autosomal information of Nimrod and the DY chromosome, which are in this area, are heavily influenced this area. So it affected the Denisova allele frequency. Correct? Correct. More than that, look at this area here. Look at this area here. This is warm here. This is very warm for Denisova DNA. Why is it warm here for Denisova DNA? Well, isn't this the area of the Waorani Indians, the Auca Indians, the Quechuas, the Wayus, who are descendants of Nimrod from the African family tree with the autosomal information that influenced the Denisova allele frequency, right? So it all matches up. It's all going to fit perfectly with the historical records in the Bible. It's all going to fit perfectly. It fits perfectly. It always has fit perfectly. And it will continue to fit perfectly with the information in the Bible. Because the Bible is true. It's absolutely true. You have the Semitic population, the Hamitic population, and the Japhethite population. And Denisova is a mixture between African population, autosomally, and Japhethite populations. Okay, so there you have it. And of course, it influenced the population here because of the migration here, but not so much here, right? Because these are more light-skinned people as well. But anyway, okay, and the Tibetans, of course, the Tibetans are dark-skinned. I don't know how dark-skinned all of them are, but a lot of Tibetans are dark-skinned. They have a DY chromosome, which is brother to the CY chromosome, which belongs to the African family tree, and we know that Nimrod was the son of Cush, who is the father of all sub-Saharan African people. And you can see the difference between the Neanderthal DNA and the Denisova DNA is that the Denisova is autosomally influenced by the Hamitic CY chromosome and DY chromosome family lines. Because the CY chromosome is all the way down here, all the way into Australia. You have the CY chromosome. And the DY chromosome, of course, is the Andamanese and influenced this entire area, possibly including in India. But it's, as you remember, the DY chromosome is far removed from Africa, as is the CY chromosome. But you can see here that the Denisova, which is autosomally influenced by the Hamitic population, the C and the DY chromosome, you can see the result here, why the Waorani people, the Auca Indians, the people of the CY chromosome, have allele frequencies in common with Denisova, while the Semitic people do not. See, so there's another creationist prediction, or that the Bible is true, because all we're doing is saying the Bible is true, the Bible is true, the Bible is true. That's a prediction, right? And it's being borne out right here, and in previous slide as well. So there's another boom for creationist truth, because this shows Neanderthal influence, which is not African and not Semitic, and this shows Japhethite influence, which is influenced autosomally by the African people, as opposed, and not the Semitic people. That's why Africa is warmer than the Semitic populations, and that's why there's Denisovan DNA here in South America because of the CY chromosome, which is in these populations here from Nimrod, which is African, which influenced the Denisova DNA. So that's interesting to me. And as we wind down, maybe, hopefully, see what else we have here. Okay, yeah, we're getting there. Remember I said one time India's basically split between Japhethite and the Semitic population or whatever. Well, it kind of shows here H is, of course, Elamite. The more you go over here, the more O there is, right? So it's true, this is the Y chromosome, but I think it's also true with the mitochondrial DNA. As you take a closer look, as the more information we have, the more it's going to show up. Well, I guess this is my last one for here. I might have a couple more things to look at, but if anybody's interested in their African heritage, this would be the place to go look. Because there's a lot of information here about the A, the B, the E, the G is Assyrian, the J2, of course, is Davidic. It was Judaic, but now it's more Davidic. R1B is Riphath, the son of Gomer. The T is Javan. I got the B, the E, the G again, the J1, which is basically Arabic, the L1, which is Tiras, Thracian, and then the R1B and the other. Okay, so if you do a DNA test and it says this tribe or this tribe or this tribe or this part, Maasai, Egyptian, Lebanese, Christian, Jews, Muslim, whatever. These are, you can get an idea of what the makeup of your population is. There. Anyways. Okay, I think this is the last one for here, so now I have to go to the other slides now. Okay, so I'll go over here. Which this would be the language groups, I think. I would make it bigger, but it's not that interesting to me because they're human language families. Not as interesting to me because anybody of any Y chromosome can speak any language. So to me, it's kind of irrelevant. Okay, here's the D. This is just another picture of the D, right? It's basically showing the same thing, but it's showing the Tibetan population as the DY chromosome moved up into this population, because it actually moves through here like this. The Jomans are here, but then the Ainu Japanese as well, and even over here. This population is heavily influenced by the DY chromosome, and you can see it in their features. It's clear in their features. They got curly hair with beards, whereas most of this population doesn't have beards. And, things like that. And, what is this? Oh, this is quote-unquote Mongoloid, which is ill-defined. What is this? People with slanted eyes or something? I don't know. Not very well defined. Okay. So, Mongoloid, East Asian, must be an old map. Doesn't sound very politically correct to me. East Asian related. Okay, that's what that means. East Asian related. And of course, this area here is Meshech. And this area is Magog. And it's basically what it is, Magog and Meshach, basically Jacobite, but it's courses down in this area of two. I guess it's, well, whatever, East Asian related. So it is, because the O does go down into this area, so it is related. Distribution total per population. Okay. And as far as America goes, the QY chromosome, of course, it's related. It's a QY chromosome. Interesting. This little swap through here is interesting because that's kind of represents the influence of the Mediterranean Phoenician population that mined gold, silver, copper, and silver in this area. So, let me see what else. Okay. All right. That's about it, I guess. So I'm going to have to backtrack here or somehow get back onto this one here. There we go. That fixed that. I go Honesty Angel, Antonio, and the Christian Carpenter. Christian Carpenter, good to see. These are my diehard fan, even though it's 0 right now. I got 0 people watching right now, but that's okay. This is Antonio. Good to see you. See, when you don't have very many people watching, you can highlight people. Jerome, there's Jerome. JJ, Christian, Antonio. There we go. And we have Honesty Angel with a chill cat. Chill with cat. That's a calico cat. Emoji, whatever. Have to start over. Yeah, I can start. Okay, I'll start from the beginning. I'll start over from the beginning for Honesty Angel. There we go. All right, so I guess we'll end it now with this. The end. So the Bible is born out to be true every time. Of course, it started out with physics and math, and that proves the creation or that the universe is a fabrication, because it's nonsensical to say that the universe caused itself or generated itself. It's just absolute nonsense. Or ordered itself. You know, the elements don't even order themselves, much less the information. So we'll leave it with that. And these people that are supposed to be scientists and biologists and other kinds of scientists, you guys got to get with it. You got to get with the program because you're way off. God bless everybody. Take care. I just went through a whole lot of DNA that proves the Bible is true, which in turn proves that God is true. And I went through a physics explanation proving that God is true, because nothing can make itself, nothing can generate itself, nothing can direct itself or order itself. So that's that. That's end of story. God bless everybody.